In touch, Paul. It's been too long, you know. You've been busy. You've been writing. You've been doing some of the science fiction too, right?
I try to do as much damage as possible.
As much damage, art as anything you can get away with, said Mr. McLuhan, I believe. Right?
Exactly. Anything that people will publish, I write.
Just put it out there.
That's right.
Yeah. I like your site. You know, we're going to let people know about that.
Oh, well, thank you.
Welcome. Welcome very much to Conversations, where it's a deep personal and professional honor to welcome to the program an old friend of Conversations and of the host of Conversations, that being me, but the guest being Paul Levinson, Dr. Paul Levinson. He is, welcome, Paul, very much to Conversation Manhattan Network.
Great to be back.
It is good to see you, as always.
My favorite kind of show.
Yeah, well, we've done a number of programs over the years, and what I want to let them know is Paul is a chair at the Department of Communications and Media at Fordham.
Correct.
Which is really good, and professor there, and he's written a number of books over the long haul, Soft Edge and other books that he's written. We can maybe talk some about that, but particularly today we want to talk about a book that I've read a good deal of and recommend as highly as is possible to recommend, and let's let people know what it looks like in the bookstores and so forth. And the title of the book is Cell Phone, and you give us the subtitle, Paul.
The story of the world's most mobile medium and how it has transformed everything.
Everything, no less.
Everything with an exclamation point. Which
okay, let's take one quick look. That's the way to look. It's in the stores now?
Oh, it is in the stores.
Yeah,
yes.
and it's doing pretty well, I think.
It's doing great.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, Paul. So we're going to want to talk about the book. And as I say, you write so well for somebody who's very knowledgeable about, you studied with Marshall McLuhan and so forth, but you're so knowledgeable of the implications of technological extension to consciousness, but you write in such a way that is so accessible, and I congratulate you very much on the book.
Well, thank you. For me, writing is like speaking.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know if I write well, but I write the way I speak.
Well, that augurs well for this program, because you write very well. I've read it, and it's very accessible to people, but it's very well informed in it. So listen, Paul, maybe you could for us. We've got a whole 58 minutes. We're going to talk about the book, and it's a huge subject and very important, but maybe you could share some of your own background just in a brief kind of way, and then let's get into a discussion of the extensions of man, technology, including the cell phone. But could you share some of your own background, please?
Sure. Well, ever since I can remember, I've been interested in communications and media. Even as a kid, when I watched television, I would talk to my friends, did you see Bob Trout on the WCBS TV news last night? And I would critique or praise his performance. So I was a crazy kid who always had an interest in media. And finally, in the 1970s, I got my PhD in media theory at New York University.
With Neil Postman.
Neil Postman was my mentor.
Was he your advisor?
Yes, he was my advisor,
Yeah.
a wonderful man.
Yeah.
And in fact, I dedicated Cell Phone, the book, to him.
Yes, right.
He passed away last year.
Yes, sadly.
Yeah.
Amusing ourselves to death.
Amusing ourselves, right, building bridges to the 18th century.
Yes.
We didn't see eye to eye on communications and media all that much,
Right.
but he was a wonderful scholar and a gifted and inspiring teacher.
Yes.
And so after I got my PhD, I did what most people with newly minted PhDs do, and I got into teaching, which I love. And I found there's a really good symbiotic relationship between teaching and writing. I do my best writing very often after I've just taught a class, and I see all of these students and all of their bedazzled expressions.
Yes, right.
And, you know, it
hones the mind. It really does. Yeah.
So that was in the late 1970s, and for a while in the mid-80s, my wife Tina Vazic and I founded an organization called Connected Education, which offered courses online completely through the internet. This was before the web was even all that well known.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That was the precursor of what is to come in terms of education, I believe.
I think, yes, absolutely. But I still always loved what I think of as in-person education. So on that track, I joined Fordham University in 1998, and they shortly afterwards made me chair of the department. And meanwhile, I've written about 15 books.
Yeah. I'm going to tick off a couple?
Yeah, I mean, my nonfiction books, mind at large, knowing in the technological age.
Somebody a motto or something? Is the protagonist?
No, mind at large, although my critics sometimes mistake it for fiction, is actually my first most important nonfiction book from the 1980s.
Oh, sorry.
But it sounds like it could be. No, that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, right. These things blend,
I
right?
sometimes get confused myself,
Yeah,
most of the time. So that was written in the mid to late 1980s. And actually a book I had before that was called In Pursuit of Truth, Essays on the Philosophy of Karl Popper. That was in the early 80s.
Open society.
That's right.
Right.
And my writing really took off nonfiction-wise in the mid to late 1990s with The Soft Edge, which you mentioned before.
Great
and
book.
Thank you. Natural History and Future of the Information Revolution.
Digital McLuhan.
Right, Digital McLuhan.
Great, another great book.
Right.
Wow.
And then I had a book out called Real Space, The Fate of Physical Presence in the Digital Age, On and Off Planet. I should get you a copy of that,
Yes,
too.
please. I would like that.
It has a really nice cover.
Yeah.
It's about the need for person-to-person communications, as we're now doing now, that is you and I.
That's interesting,
in contrast to digital media. And it also, I snuck in there my brief for space exploration.
Okay.
And meanwhile, at the same time, more or less, I've been publishing a series of science fiction novels, and you mentioned Phil D'Amato, and I think I was on...
That's your protagonist,
That's
right?
right. He's a New York City forensic detective, who I named after the senator, Alphonse D'Amato.
No, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I figured it was good publicity. Every time they mentioned the senator, it would be a plug for my book.
Was he the one who was Senator Pothole?
Yes,
Yeah,
he was.
right, Senator Pothole.
And he lost the next election as soon as my character was named, so didn't help me at all. But Phil D'Amato has appeared in 3 novels. And I think we talked about The Silk Code in one of the...
The Silk Code was one.
That was the first novel.
Good. I read it. It was really good.
And then The Consciousness Plague, and then my most recent novel, Phil D'Amato novel, is The Pixel Eye. I'll send you some copies of those.
Great.
And I'm now I've just finished my next novel. It's not a Phil D'Amato novel. It's an old-fashioned time travel novel, and the title is The Plot to Save Socrates.
All right.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of interesting in that. Yeah, that really does sound good. The Plot to Save. It's a fiction.
It is fiction.
Yeah.
And basically I never bought the fact. The story is, we find out in the Crito, Socrates has been condemned to drink hemlock. Right. And
for corrupting the youth.
Which was outrageous. He was just criticizing things and talking to people. Anyway, his good friend Crito comes to him in the middle of the night and says, "Hey, Socrates, don't worry, we have a ship waiting for you. Your wife and kids are there. We can take you away." And Socrates says, "No, I may criticize the state of Athens, but I don't put myself above or beyond
the law.
it." Right, and so he drinks the hemlock. Maybe it's because I'm so selfish myself.
Yeah, right.
He said, frankly,
take the boat, Socrates.
Absolutely.
Political asylum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I tell the real story, what really happened there.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, God, I'm anxious to read that. Yeah, okay, that's really good. You did that, and I know you're at Fordham, and Culkin was there, wasn't he? And Culkin was there, a great supporter and friend, I guess, of the great Marshall McLuhan, who you also knew and studied some with, or at least had exchange and so forth with the great media oracle of the electronic age. Huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I enjoy actually talking to you, and I enjoy conversations with other bright people. But to have a conversation with Marshall McLuhan, it was in a class by itself.
Yeah, he was wired in an unusually interesting way, wasn't he? Yeah.
His mind was like a sparkler of ideas, just a font of ideas. And yes, John Culkin was actually McLuhan's disciple, more or less. And John brought McLuhan down to Fordham University for a year in the late 1960s.
Right in his heyday.
That's right. And then John went on to create the MA in Media Studies program, which is now still continuing at New School University.
Oh, it's not at Fordham.
No, it's not at Fordham. John left Fordham. That's actually a whole story in itself. John was a Jesuit.
Yeah.
And in the late 1960s, actually, quite a few Jesuits decided to leave the order and just, lead full, secular lives.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Why, do you think? Or what was it part of? I don't mean to go into it unless you would
No, I think that John just found that there were things that he enjoyed in life that were not quite compatible with being a Jesuit. But he had a very keen intellectual edge.
The Jesuits were pretty heavy-duty intellectuals.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so John Culkin, in his way, was a great man in communications also. And he died, actually, in 1993 a few days right after my own father died. So it was sort of a sad time.
You were close with him? Or?
I was over the years, yes, because although I got my PhD at NYU and Neil Postman was my mentor, I got my MA at the New School, and John Culkin was my mentor.
I see, okay.
So I had some very good mentors.
Yeah, you did indeed. And McLuhan was, now you're teaching, your professor and chair at Fordham. Is that the Fordham in Queens, or is it here? Where is Fordham
It's actually
located?
now a Fordham in 3 places.
All right.
The original Fordham University, this goes back to the 1840s, is right across the street from the Botanical Gardens and the Bronx Zoo in the Bronx. In fact, grew up there as a kid, and I always loved the place. And that's where my main office is. That's where our department is mostly situated. By mostly, about 3/4 of our students are in the Rose Hill Bronx campus. We have another campus very close to the Manhattan neighborhood
over here
network.
on 10th Avenue.
That's right, exactly.
The law school's there?
Well, the law school's there, and there's but we also have a communications program, which is also part of my department.
That's part of your responsibility?
That's right.
Right around the corner from
MNN?
Okay, good enough. Yeah, right.
And Fordham has recently merged with Marymount College in Tarrytown, and will probably in the next year or two be offering communications courses there too.
Very good. Are they offering advanced degrees and that sort of
We're
thing?
We're currently offering a master's degree, a master's degree in public communications. But I'm glad you asked, because we're right in the process of putting together a PhD program.
Okay.
And
big job, huh?
Yeah, but it's very exciting, and you know, there really are very few excellent PhD programs, even now in 2004, which is when this is being taped. None of the Ivy Leagues have PhDs in communications. I mean, NYU has one, which is good. Columbia has a degree in journalism, but nothing in, no PhD in communications.
I was going to ask you about that, because communication is such a huge subject in a way. It's very comprehensively involved with all kinds of things. And we live in an age of, or have in academia, of reductionism, where it's highly specialized. And communication, I can see where it could become a generic thing where you could touch into almost any field and have an almost comprehensive overview of things as your charge.
Absolutely.
And it runs counter to the zeitgeist of breaking everything down in a quantum mechanics kind of way to areas of specialization.
I wish you were dean of some university.
Well, okay.
But no, because you're completely right, and one of the reasons why it's taken so long for communications to become established on the graduate level, and even on the undergraduate level to some extent, is precisely because of what you were just getting at, that communications transcends disciplines. To be thoroughly versed in communications, you need to know philosophy, history, political science. My next book after The Cell Phone, which I'm currently working on, is called The Flouting of the First Amendment. And there, on the one hand, it's a history of communications, freedom of speech, but it also involves political science. So that's part of communications, and there's an aesthetic dimension. So ideally, a school of communications would draw on all of these things.
I remember, because I did my degrees in geography, which is a very comprehensive, there's a lot of it. And it's like history, there's a lot of it. They're two very comprehensively involved things. But we don't have any department in the academic world where you go to the university and they say, what are you interested in? And you say, everything. There's no department of everything, is there?
No, but there should be.
You think there could be?
Yeah, I do.
Because we're looking for pattern recognition between specialized things, and there isn't that kind of thing. I remember I did a fellow from the journalism school, Columbia, and he said Columbia journalism sort of has that kind of a thing, because you can, business journalism, fashion, sports, everything, it involves everything in a certain kind of way. I look for those kind of comprehensive views of things, and so I'm happy to hear that communication is in that vein.
Absolutely, and journalism is indeed an ideal example of that, because to be a good journalist, you have to have expertise in something beyond just writing and reporting. And so whether it's economics or business, or as you're saying, the arts. I.A. Richards, one of the great literary critics of the 20th century, used to talk about the difference between the microscope and the telescope. They're both very valuable tools. The microscope zooms in on something very small and displays all the intricate connections.
Which can be fascinating.
Can be fascinating.
Absolutely fascinating.
The telescope does completely the opposite. It takes the broad view and connects things that are very far apart to the naked eye. And I think a good communications program needs both.
Yeah, and the Vedics have been telling us since, I don't know, when the Indo-Europeans first came into the subcontinent of Asia, that it's all a seamless web. There are no academic disciplines in reality.
That's right.
I mean, that's the thing that we could begin with. But we have this tendency to try and break everything down in specialization. Bucky Fuller one time used to comment, he said, we have a few guys that are pirates running the world and everything, kings or whatever. Yeah. And he said it was a conscious act on the part of those people in that pilot seat to set up graduate schools in order to get the best minds so specialized out on something that they could never think about the whole and become a threat. Yeah. You know, I don't know, maybe that's a little cynical or maybe a little, but, you know, you're not thinking about the whole thing because you're all off in your own area of specialization and never the twain shall meet. We have the intelligence is all wrong. It's all stovepipe, tunnel vision kind of things, and they don't link the dots, as they said, in a comprehensive pattern recognizing capability that is unique to the human mental process. We're very good at pattern recognizing.
That's right. Well, Buckminster Fuller was great on many issues. In fact, apropos of cell phone, one of the things I talk about in the book is Fuller's Dymaxion principle. He came up with this in the 1930s, and again, it came from studying the big picture, not looking at little tiny pieces of it. And he realized, you know, it sounds like common sense in retrospect, but no one else really put it this way beforehand, that as technologies become more advanced, they do more and more with less and less physical size.
Ephemeralization.
Yeah. And so, you know, the power of the cell phone, if you think it's getting increasingly powerful, and it's getting smaller and smaller.
Right. It's a very hopeful sign.
That's right. It is. And that makes it easier to handle.
I don't think it's a small matter, if I may, Paul. We're going to get to cell phone, but it's the cell phone. It's a cell. It's like a chip. I mean, we had the chip, silicon, and Moore's law. It doubles every 18 months, and it gets more and more powerful, and the line begins to start going exponential, almost L-shaped. And so forth. But they're going to be going, I don't know how long Moore's law will hold with silicon and that kind of thing, but they're moving toward nanotechnology, and they're going to be having the backbone of the information technology, as I understand, when it gets to a molecular level, and they're going to use carbon-60, which is Buckminster Fullerene, will be the backbone of computing capability at a molecular level, and that's just, that's within our eyesight.
Absolutely.
Or our eyesight. I mean, that's coming.
Well, when you say molecular level, there's no doubt about the fact that the most sophisticated, complex, powerful communication instrument, of which we know very, very little about, the human mind, the human brain, exactly. And if you think about this little kilogram of matter, and it basically juggles everything that we see, hear, feel, taste, our memories, our feelings, our imaginations, you know, our reasoning.
It's a miracle.
It is. And so technology is still limping along, and you know, it's totally unsurprising that silicon will go a long way. But
good for another 20 years, maybe, or 15?
I mean, maybe even longer than that. You know, we still use carbon, lead pencils to write, not lead, but whatever, graphite. So, I mean, you know, we may still use silicon devices, but yes, in order to make the next leap, we'll have to go beyond silicon. And I think the molecular level, one of the things I talk about in the Consciousness Plague, the science fiction novel, is I came across an interesting little study that shows that some bacteria are quite sophisticated in their communication.
Right.
That basically they attack a host, say a human being, and then some more bacteria come around, and these additional bacteria are waiting for a signal from the first invading bacteria, and if the signal says, in effect, look, this immune system is too strong, and they're wiping us out.
Get
these
lost.
Bacteria, but if the signal is, hey, we've beaten this immune system, come on in. So, as a matter of fact, we've now designed some antibiotics that basically interdict this communication system.
No kidding.
Jam it, right, and that's a way of
We've hacked it? We've hacked the bacteriological
That's
code?
That's right. So
clever little devils we are, huh?
I was thinking, you know, maybe part of understanding how our brain works is who knows what we may have moving around in our brain that are, you know, we have red blood cells in our body. Maybe we have some kind of little microorganisms.
I know. I use it all the time in the air because Michael Wade makes it available in the Times. We got 100 trillion cells in the human organism, and they're all overlaid with a design called DNA, which we knew nothing about, 30, 40 years ago. We didn't know about neurotransmitters, uptake, and the synaptic cleft or anything. We're coming more and more to understand things all the time, are we not? There's a revolution in every field, comes every day, it seems.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, if you look at history, There were certain times in history when there was an enormous amount of intellectual development, ancient Alexandria, the Renaissance. We are
the Enlightenment.
That's right.
We just did a program about that yesterday.
Absolutely, the Enlightenment, and we're in one of those areas now. And you know, I'm sure you've heard about this. I always laugh, you know, about whoever it was in the patent office in the late 1800s. At some point, so maybe I guess we can sort of close down most of the office. We've
invented everything.
Yeah.
Well, there's some guy Morgan said we've come to the end of the big ideas in science. Some guy he's seriously saying there are no more big ideas. It's just a matter of filling in or something.
That's
you know?
Yeah. Well, another great example is as Auguste Comte, the French philosopher.
Progressive, the progress.
That's right.
The idea of progress.
That's right.
And,
yeah. One of the things he said is at some point, well, you know, one example of something that we'll never understand is the chemical composition of stars.
Right.
Because how can we actually get out there?
Yes, right.
So of course, there was no space travel then. And about 10 years afterwards, spectroscopy, you know, the science of analyzing light was developed.
Chinese have a saying, spare us from living in interesting time, we're doomed, because these are the most incredibly interesting times ever.
Absolutely.
It seems that way to me, but I don't know. You know, it used to take 100 years to invent a tack or a nail or something. Now it's a revolution in every field. One of which is this cell phone.
Yeah.
Now, that's a development. We've got the Internet, and as a person who's not been, you know, I've only come upon it recently, relatively, a decade or so or something. It seems to me like manna from heaven. The idea that you've got this Internet, the web, the whole thing that all came after Fuller's projections and so forth. And it's now coming almost exponentially, that computing capability, it seems overall like a kind of miracle to me that this thing comes to exist, almost becomes part of what is like a DNA analog to the biological process, something. It's really important, the communication between the various parts of the collective human society, which is like Gaia, called Gaia by James Lovelock and so forth, but you know that it's a big development. And cell phone is a really important, and as you put it, the world's most mobile medium has changed everything. So spell out some of the dimensions of this for us, if you would.
Well, a large part of it is the one thing that was lacking in what I think of as the first part of the Internet digital revolution was mobility. Because what was required in order for a person to get online and roam the green pastures of cyberspace was you had to be seated, you know, behind a desk, or even if it wasn't a desk, you had to have something on your lap that was plugged into something.
And in the early stages, you had to have a room full of transistors in the room of this studio, which is now on a chip.
Exactly. So, you know, this, you know, basically obliged people to make a choice. Do I want to be in cyberspace, or do I want to be in real space, in the real world? And if you were in the real world, if you were walking, talking, doing something in the real world, by and large, you couldn't hook into the new realms of information. In fact, you couldn't even talk on the phone unless you happened to pass by some kind of public phone booth.
That's right. It wasn't that long ago. You had to be please, you got a cartoon in your book, please call heaven or something. There was a Bell ad at the turn of the century.
Yes.
Please, Central, dial heaven for me.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's because they thought it was miraculous and they could even use the phone. But it was only an incomplete miracle because, again, people had to get to a fixed place to use the phone. So the first thing to note about the cell phone is that it cuts the umbilical cord that attaches us to rooms, to places, and allows us to have access to the information world wherever we may be. Not only to have a conversation, but now, of course, to access the web, you know, send email through BlackBerries. I saw the other day they are now actually making, listen to this, 2-minute movies, which will be available to people through their cell phones. So if you're standing on a train platform, you want to see a quick movie, 2 minutes, you basically dial it in and you get it on your screen. And it's good to take these things against the trends, because the trends are in the direction of ever more powerful systems. They're going to make possibility things that are as difficult for us to see perhaps as it was for the people at the turn of the century to see the telephone calling everywhere in the world. That's right. That's right.
So we're on the verge of a revolution that's still expanding.
That's right. We're on the verge, and we're actually, we have our foot already in the door of an environment, of a world, of an existence in which everything, all kinds of communication, Dan Rather on CBS, you know, the New York Times,
O'Reilly?
The O'Reilly, yeah, I've been on O'Reilly.
Yeah, I know you have. Yeah.
See me.
Right.
I actually like him.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. Well, yeah.
But you're a
well, you
better
tend to
interviewer.
like everybody. You're one of those guys. You're a Will Rogers type, aren't you? I am too. I like everybody.
I like people. It's
yeah,
true.
I tend to like that. Yeah.
Right. No, because
it's a curse. No. Yeah.
Well, you would be likable by someone even if they weren't like me, who liked everybody. You're a good person.
Yeah, but it is this thing that's going,
that's
and
right. So,
you've zeroed in on it.
That's right. So anything and everything. But here's the second point about the cell phone, and this is something I spend a lot of time talking about in the book as well.
Yeah, I know what you're coming up
and this
with.
is the leash. The cell phone, on the one hand, it liberates us, and it liberates us anytime we want to initiate a call or a search for information. Then, as you put it, it's a gateway to manna from heaven. Doesn't matter where we are, we take out our cell phone, press a button, we can talk to someone, we can get information, anything we want just about. But the flip side of that is...
Invasion of privacy?
Yeah, in times that we don't...
Mr. McLuhan used to talk about that.
That's right, yes. Marshall McLuhan's point was, in the 1970s, his typical sardonic take.
Yes, he was so funny. He was so funny. He was funny.
You know, Paul, the last place that North Americans can be alone is in their automobiles because they have no privacy at home.
Is that the way he spoke?
That's the way he spoke.
Yeah, I used to. He allowed us how I could sit down at the seminar, but I never got close with him.
He was great.
I knew his brother. He got along. His brother was Maurice.
Maurice. Yes, that's right.
He was accessible.
That's
but,
right. Yeah.
You got close to him. You became a friend. You were an actual friend.
Yes. And his wife Corinne too, and Eric, his son, and his daughter Terry. Wonderful family.
Yeah.
And Stephanie McLuhan became a filmmaker.
She the one who did the thing on Indians? She wrote,
that's
T.C. McLuhan.
T.C. McLuhan is Terry McLuhan.
Right. And she did a thing on American Indians.
The Earth.
Yeah, Touch the Earth. It's a good book.
Photographs,
early of American Indian peoples.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, he was there. But so, you're right. So you've got this kind of trade-off. He used to do that, but privacy. Yeah. So in a certain sense, if you take an analogy or an analog with the biological process, with this DNA, Crick came along. And they got the helix, and we got this thing. And what a miracle.
That's right.
100 trillion cells in a human organism, and they're all overlaid with a design, and they're all interconnected as a system.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing.
I mean, it's really a miracle kind of thing.
That's right.
Isn't it analog with that in terms of, can we extend that, or do we have to be careful? Because, I mean, if you say, like Gaia, James Lovelock sees the whole biological process and human society itself as an organism seen from the world, even nested within, we all live in a sea of bacteria and so forth. An evolutionary process, all of it's interconnected, but we're coming to understand it better or knowing it more consciously, the process of which we're a part. Is that part of maybe what the biological... Does biology have a purpose? Is there any direction or purpose to things in universe, or what do you think along those lines?
Well, that's an interesting question.
McLuhan was a Catholic, wasn't he?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Well, on the first question, the analogy of human society as one organism is an excellent analogy, but we have to always bear in mind it's an analogy. It's not, as they say in logic, an identity or a literal one-to-one equation.
A metaphor?
Yeah, it is a metaphor.
Metaphors can matter.
Yeah, one's reach must extend one's grasp.
Yes, right.
Well, what's a metaphor?
Yeah, right. What's a metaphor, right?
No, it's true. It does help us understand society, but the difference, of course, is that if we human beings with our cell phones are cells in this larger organism, we have a very significant difference and distinction between us and the cells that are inside our body. And that difference is we're
each of the cells are individualized. You have epidermal cells, liver cells, and they're all part of a system.
That's true.
Is that true of us?
Well, yes.
And are we ecologically embedded?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, but as far as we know, the liver cells and the blood cells don't think for themselves, right? They're not capable of conscious thought.
They'll act up if they don't get oxygen.
They will, but that's basically just a response.
Okay.
We have the ability, any one of us as cells, to step out of the organism to some extent and consciously perhaps manipulate things.
Well, we have a unique capability, don't we? I mean, beavers make dams, and birds make nests, but we really have carried that to the max because we can extend our consciousness into the environment and make the world, like Teilhard de Chardin said, we can build the earth in a way of our own design. We can design the world in a way that makes it different than, like in the Eden-like sense, is received by most of the biological processes, isn't that? Don't you think it's sort of unique that way?
I do think it's sort of unique. And back to your question about divinity and is there a purpose to this, I don't know, but if there is a divinity in the universe, the closest that I think we can come to it is to look at ourselves.
Okay.
Because we, and this is a thought that goes back to Carl Sagan and some of his predecessors, we are really the cosmos expressing whatever will the cosmos has. When we build a new technology, when we get off this planet in a spaceship, when we engineer new organisms that never existed before, when we build artificial intelligences that seem to be beginning to...
Genetic engineering.
Exactly. We're, in a way, we're doing God's work, but we're the ones who are doing it.
Right.
So that's sort of, it's an Emersonian idea.
Yeah,
too. I
right.
think Emerson has something that divinity is expressed through humanity.
But we're coming to understand these things in a way, and there's certain choices to us, and we're also existentially in a condition where much of the technological extension is destructive. We got to the point where we can destroy the whole ball of wax.
Yes.
Maybe.
Well,
that's sort of
right.
a unique existential
It is.
thing against 200,000 years of human existence.
Yeah.
Is
well,
it not?
that's the two-edged sword quality which the cell phone, you know, partakes of. And one of the things I talk about in the book, a very unpleasant thing, is the cell phone at war. Not only as a vehicle of communication, but actually as a vehicle for blowing things up. You know, it's thought that the trains in Madrid, you know, the ones that blew
Were
up.
triggered that way?
Yeah. And, you know, it's not very hard to do because the cell phone sends information. So you're completely right. Technology is a two-edged sword. It's like a knife. You know, the knife can be used to cut food. That's good. It can be used to cut people. That's bad. And that's why, getting back to what I was saying before, the fact that we do have the capacity to think and make decisions, that makes us different from blind cells and blind evolution. And so, again, apropos the cell phone, we don't have to accept the disadvantages that the cell phone may unthinkingly impose upon us.
I wonder how far we can project that cell phone metaphor along the lines of moving toward molecular computing. How small can it get? How long can we realize, or how can we, it's ecologically, it's a great hope that if you can do ever more with less. That ephemeralization idea has a tremendous implications as far as having something ecologically appropriate for organizing things without raping the planet like the satanic mills, you know, and that kind of thing. It's got great hope. But how far can we extend it? Could I share a little thing with you?
Sure.
My friend, Maggie, just was getting a new pair of glasses, right, when I was reading your book. And she went to pick them up, and it just dawned on me in the shower. This happened to me in the shower as it happened. I was thinking, if the cell phone is getting smaller and smaller, how small can it get? And how far can we get to be, if you're going to have a computing mechanism that will be going through the bloodstream at a molecular level, Buckminster fullerene and things. And if you get it down to where, how far could it be that if you had some sort of it's very small. It gets very small. It gets to be where you can't type. But couldn't they have some sort of a device where it goes and you have, because you put on a pair of glasses. If you put on a pair of glasses, I look at this room, you put on a pair of glasses. I guess this is, what do you call it, that virtual reality thing? You have some sort of glasses that's linked to a computer that's, you know, like that. And then you would see the type thing or the thing, so that it, do you understand what I'm trying to say? Is that the optical revolutions linked into that will make possible smaller and smaller so that the cell phone could be just absolutely minuscule, but yet the implications as far as what could be done with optics make it possible for you to have, why can't you have a movie? Could you get a cell phone that would have the power, because the power is increasing, to where you could project a movie to the screen of the Ziegfeld Theater from a cell phone of not too far away and can be projected what's in the labs now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's pretty staggering.
Yes, it is, and we're on our way to doing it. You know, my most recent science fiction novel, The Pixel Eye, the main point that I deal with there is, let's say we could figure out what it was in the brain that basically perceives vision and perceives hearing. I mean, we know, of course, already about the auditory nerve and the optic nerve, but we don't really quite know how they're processed in the brain.
Zeroing in on it, though, aren't we?
And we are, but we're not quite there.
Okay.
But if we knew that, we could then perhaps put a little tiny chip in the brain of a squirrel.
Whoa,
and then, assuming it could survive the operation, so that anything the squirrel saw would automatically be transmitted back to a big computer someplace in a lab. You now have a spectacular army of spies.
Oh, the squirrels.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
So, and the squirrels scampering around. They don't know anything. You know, they just, you know, they go up to look at people anyway to get peanuts.
How far could we go that way?
Yeah.
How far could we go that way?
Well,
maybe we have worms?
well,
or maybe we have
yeah.
moles? We
Yeah.
have moles, so we have the
Literally,
moles
that's right.
could get, you know, the moles, we could
Yeah.
set them loose in the adversary's camp
Yeah.
or something? Or,
Yeah.
Because
Well,
they use the term mole, don't
that's
we, for
right.
spies or
That's
something?
right. Well,
Yeah.
we have the template. In
Yeah.
other words, what you're
Yeah.
just saying is correct, and the human brain is the template.
Yes.
So you want to know how small can we go?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there are things in the human brain that on the neuronal level are
Yes.
incredibly small. They're
Yeah.
microscopically
Yeah.
small.
Molecular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they do these things. They see and hear, you know, some kind of aggregate of cells. So sure, the cell phone that we have now is a big, clumsy macro instrument.
Compared to where it's trending.
Absolutely.
And yet it's going to have the capability to bring us wondrous things, even though it's that much smaller.
Yes.
Isn't there hope in that in terms of the ecological concerns about raping the planet in order for people to have access to things?
Yeah, although I will note just one cautionary aspect.
All right, good.
It was hoped that when people began doing more things on computers like email, that this would begin saving trees because you'd have less need for paper.
Yeah.
And much to
Give me
everyone's
the
chagrin.
give me the dismal
Well,
statistics
are
on the trees.
Paper use is up.
Yeah.
Because
well, there's more people.
there's more people and there's just so much more information that people still need to scribble down. They still want to print something out.
I still lose it all the time.
Yeah,
I get it
I know.
on an envelope and it's gone.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I prefer email.
Yeah, right.
But,
I know
you
it's wonderful.
Yeah, it is wonderful. But nonetheless.
But if you had a computer thing, could you have glasses that would you wouldn't have a thing that somehow you'd be able to see?
Yes,
look,
you could
because
do
you
without
look
your
through
fingers.
glasses and
Yeah.
you're just seeing the whole environment. Couldn't you just see a keyboard?
Yes, and absolutely.
By a click,
Yes.
and then you type the keyboard and you
Right.
do it, and you would, and
Yes.
and the thing that's doing it is just the size of
Yes.
a pinhead.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, this is well known already. Human beings can recognize expressions in other people's eyes that are almost, if you try to measure them, it's almost impossible to see the difference.
Right.
You know, so I'm looking at you at this moment. Now I'm not quite looking at you. I mean, so how much did my eye move? Just a tiny, tiny bit.
Yeah.
But you can tell that I'm not looking at you. Just and
Oh,
so,
I got
yeah,
I got it.
so you know
I got it.
exactly- yeah. So
Yeah.
therefore, but that's, you know, suggests to what you're talking about. If the human mind is already so sensitive to these tiny differences, you could have some kind of reception device on a computer so that if you looked at it one way, it would do one thing, and you looked at it a slightly different way, it would type a different thing.
But Marshall McLuhan used to talk about body percept, didn't he?
Right,
And
yes.
that the tactility is an extension of all of our sensory capabilities in a certain kind of way, and there's body percept. So it's like a pattern recognizing capability that as a biological system we have with others. We pick up on vibes, they call
Yes,
it, the
that's what
hippies
we-
and
that's
stuff, and
right.
there's something to that.
That's
It's a
right.
feeling and everything like
That's
that.
right.
Oh.
And then, of course, voice-activated phones. You know, on the one hand now, the thumb has come back into vogue because you can
The
use
opposable
the
thumb.
Yeah, opposable thumb to do all kinds of quick typing on the cell phone. By the way, that's a very
How
nice...
can you do quick typing on a cell? I don't even
Here.
have a cell phone.
I'll show you.
You have a cell? I don't
yeah.
even have one. I'm behind the times. I know a lot of people, that's all they have is a
I don't know
cell
if the
phone.
camera can see this, but basically what people do...
You want me to hold it up?
No, yeah,
Oh.
I'll show you what people
Well, no,
do.
you
is-
better hold it to the camera.
Yeah, is that the camera over there? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Come in on it, folks, if
yeah,
you can.
so, you know, you type things like this.
Can you come in? No, the other camera. If you can, I think.
Yeah. All right.
This is Evelyn Wood's, no, that's speed reading. Who's it, Gibbs? Somebody who types stenography?
Yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
you do this, here, I'll do it like this.
Okay.
I can't, here, let's see. You can actually use your thumb, or you can use any finger, but actually what most people do is they use their thumb. Unfortunately, you can't see it this way.
Yeah.
But,
I don't know why you can't come
yeah.
with the camera. Come in?
Here, maybe I'll do it with this hand. Is this better? Yeah, well, not that it doesn't work.
You see, the optical problems.
Take my word for it. You
Yeah.
see the cell phone here,
Yeah.
and I can't bring my thumb around.
There you
that.
go. Here they're coming in
Okay,
now,
all
I
right,
think.
right.
Now,
Yeah,
whichever
good.
one you're on.
Yeah.
Can
so
you come
see-
in tight?
That's good. No, so
Oh.
you can see my thumb.
There we
That's
go.
it, good.
Come in, come in,
Moving
come
the
in,
cell
come in,
phone
come in.
like that.
Come in,
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
camera. Come in,
So this is
come
what I
in.
mean. So you
There
see,
you
this
go.
is my opposable thumb
Thank
high. It's
you.
waving to you.
Yeah.
And I can actually type things. I'm just like typing randomly now. But it's, you know, I've seen kids. They basically they type out whole messages, instant messaging, which is called texting on cell phones. And they just, you know, they run over these keys very fast, and they do it all with their thumbs.
Yeah.
All right. So and so the old-fashioned way of typing.
Let me see that a second, can I?
Sure.
Go ahead, talk.
Yeah, the old-fashioned way of typing, which is, you're typing with your index fingers.
Yes, well, I'm afraid I never got touch
yeah,
very good. Yeah.
You're now typing with your thumb. And I find it interesting because, and I talk about this in the cell phone book, because the opposable thumb originally enabled us to grasp things like the cell phone, and it sort of helped us become a technological species.
Sure, what would we
because
do
you
without
can grasp something, this
instead
is
of a palm.
Right, exactly.
You
so
just had it like this.
This little thing here, you can grasp a lot. And now, millions of years later, we're using this thumb to actually help us communicate.
Yeah, right.
So it's actually something Stephen Jay Gould referred to it as pre-adaptation.
Is it Panda's thumb?
Yeah.
Or,
well, that's something else. The
Panda's thumb was a book of
that
his,
he wrote. Right.
Yeah, right. He was great.
But pre-adaptation is when you have one evolutionary characteristic which evolved in response to an environment, and then a long time afterwards it turns out to work very well in a new environment.
Pre-adaptation.
Yeah. So it's as if our opposable thumb was pre-adapted to be a good vehicle of typing on a cell phone.
Down the line.
Down the line, right. So
that's an argument for design, maybe? Or
that's right. That's
Michael
right.
Behe, you know, with the Darwin's black box. And
so the thumbs have it in terms of the cell
The
phone.
thumbs have it, right? Yeah.
But the other point I wanted to make is voice control is becoming increasingly important. So this is really a very old-fashioned cell phone, in that the only way I can use this is by getting the thing going with my finger.
You have an old-fashioned cell phone?
Yeah, well,
the author of Cell Phone?
Yeah,
you have an old-fashioned cell phone? What does that say about Paul Levinson?
I'm an old-fashioned guy.
Aren't you supposed to? Paul, you simply must learn to groove in a super mod world. I mean, you must.
Hey, I just went from Sinatra to the Beatles.
All right.
Oh, you got that. I like hip-hop also. So,
okay, good.
But, but newer cell phones, and they're really just beginning. In a few years, I'm sure they'll all be that way.
Will they be ever to get it to where, like you say, you got this thing, so you're going like this, and I got it.
Good.
But you're going with your thumb and all that. Are they going to ever be able to? They're not going to be able to get it to where you just have glasses and you just you see in front of you a keyboard.
Yeah.
And the keys are that big
Right.
or something, and they can do it by and you just do it like this and it will.
Yeah,
do it? Or how can they do
you really
that?
want that vision thing, right? Yes, well, you will be able to do that, but the point I want to make is even
or you'll be able to see the controls to make it do what it, or you'll be able to see a movie come in your glasses.
Right, but you'll also be able to talk. That's the point.
Yeah, right, okay.
Hey, how you doing? I'm trying to call my friend Harold Channer, and then the phone will say, okay, and it'll call you, and I don't have to do it.
They have that now? They have that now?
Yes, they do have that now.
That's good. Now you just say call number, call Harold.
That's right.
Right.
And, hey, look, I want to go have dinner tonight in an Italian restaurant someplace in the village. I'm interested, what's doing on Sullivan Street. Yeah. And then the system will give me the answer that way.
You'd have to have some way to get it to your ear.
Well, the system will it could speak out.
But if you had these glasses with an ear, what I'm trying to say is the miniaturization thing is going to be able to interface with some of the other revolutions that are coming along and making these things available to us. Or you'll be able to have. That's what they call virtual reality. Well, if you're looking through a pair of glasses, or let's say put a helmet on, you could put a helmet over your head, and you'd have aroma.
Right, but see, you don't want to do that completely.
Okay, you don't.
Well, because the key with the cell phone is it gives you this duality of being connected to the digital realm. Yeah. But you're also able to see and hear and smell everything that's going on around you in the real world.
Why is that important?
It's important because there are things in the analog world that we need as
like a racing car
creatures.
that might run into you.
Exactly.
For instance,
That's
or
right.
a tiger.
That's right.
It would be good to know he's coming down the path, wouldn't it? Yeah, burning
It's also
bright.
good to have like a nice breeze blowing on your face and be aware of the sunshine and, see a beautiful woman who walks by. So all of these things are. Some of them are available online, but it's not the same as when you're seeing it.
Yeah, and there's a problem. Cell phones you got all over, because now we have the tablet and now we have the wireless Wi-Fi and that kind of thing that's coming. So to get cell phone, that's voice, and that's the one thing you can do. But it's now getting to be, as you said, you get a 2-minute movie over a cell phone. That's over the Wi-Fi, or not a Wi-Fi. It's not a Wi-Fi system. Wi-Fi systems, in order to get a movie on your computer, has to be a whole new infrastructure, has to be built above what the cell phone required. Now, what's happening on that dynamic?
Well, it's happening. That's why these movies that will be available on cell phones will, in effect, be Wi-Fi movies.
What's making that possible for the cell phone to have something other than text or voice? Those are two things, but actually a video transmission. Is it the power of the system, or is the cell phone network infrastructure that's interconnecting all these cell phones becoming more efficient? Does it have to be upgraded? What's the reality there? You would understand that.
Yes, well, that's a very good question. And, you know, one way of understanding the limitations of any system is it's only as good as its weakest link, that old cliche. So in other words, you can have a spectacularly advanced cell phone which is capable of receiving a very wide band, a very rich array of information with incredible detail, full movies, audio, visual, and so on. But if you don't have a transmission system that's up to the task, you're still not going to receive it.
That's one of the problems of systems thinking.
It is, and one of the problems with cell phone use, you know, today, you know, in the fall of 2004, and most people have cell phones experience this, is very often forget even about movies. You just want to talk to somebody, and you can't get a clear connection. And the reason for that is the networks are still not up to the task. Cell phone use has grown so quickly, and in some parts of the world even more quickly than here. That's something else I talk about in the book. In Kenya, for example, people were suing the cell phone networks because they were furious. They paid money for it, and then they weren't able to make calls. Not because the cell phone networks there were falling down on the job out of laziness. It's just because the usage expanded so rapidly that the actual transmission systems weren't adequate for the communications.
Well, you do need some systems thinking.
Yes, that's right. But you know,
globally.
That's right. You know, you hear and you see ads on television, and they're somewhat correct. You know, Sprint, MCI, they're extending the systems. AT&T. So you know, it takes a while.
Wi-Fi, where does that fit in?
Well, Wi-Fi stands for wide fidelity.
Yes.
And there are three things that you need for that. You need a production of it in the first place, in such a way that you get maximum fidelity, but here's the key, with as little information as possible, because you want the package to be transmissible as fast and as easily as possible. So the key is you want to, again, it's the Dymaxion principle, you want to get as much as possible into a package that's as light as possible, as transmissible as possible. That's step one. Step two is you have to have a robust network system so that it can send out these packages.
And that's just being built up now for the Wi-Fi.
That's right. And then three,
as a competitor to cable, or something.
Yes, exactly.
And
then three is the actual cell phone itself. Again, you know, my cell phone here really is this poor thing. I hate to keep criticizing it. I couldn't see a movie on this cell phone.
You couldn't see a movie on your cell phone?
Right.
And you've written the book
I
on
know,
cell phone?
It's terrible.
Couldn't you get some sort of a thing from some Sony or supplier? Or having writing the definitive book, I should think they would want you to have the latest thing. You haven't learned to work the system where you could get the latest?
I know.
In the name of doing a review or something? I'm just giving you a suggestion. Maybe I'll talk to you off camera. You know, you could get ahead a little more than you are, young man.
I'm too nice a guy.
Too nice a guy.
But maybe somebody at Sony will...
You can get over that.
Yeah, I know that.
You can become a son of a...
I know.
You know.
Well, there was a science fiction story years ago. I can't remember who wrote it. Maybe William Tenn. Sounds like his kind of story in the 1950s about it. And it took place in the future. And a guy wakes up in the morning and says, all right, look, I have a really heavy business day ahead of me. I have to go see my psychologist. And so he goes sees a psychologist. And as we read the story, the psychologist is just a nasty person who says infuriating things and gets this person furious. And finally, after an hour of this stuff, the protagonist stands up and says, all right, you're fired. Walks out of furious. And then there's like a little postscript. The guy's like goes to his first business meeting and he's thinking, okay, I'm really furious. I'm really angry. Now I'm ready to go into this meeting. I'm going to eat up this guy alive. I'm not going to let him take advantage of me. And so in this future society, psychologists are paid to make people furious.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's their job, right? To work up the rage or the hates. What do they call them in 1984? They call them hates or rages or something.
Rages.
Rages, I think, yeah. But it is. So we're coming to a time where it's really really an exciting time. There are breakthroughs coming. These things are developing in the labs now, and they're coming to be real and so forth. There should be, if I may, there should be more departments of communication who are following these kind of things. Yeah. Is the industry following it better than academicians? Are the intellectual responsibility? Do you like Kurzweil? Do you like the people who come, Minsky, and some of the people who write in these things seriously? Because this is the leading edge of the evolution of the extension of our kind. It's really important. And what do you think academically or intellectually, taking the measure of all these technological extensions of our capability from McLuhan on and the people that are going, how's the state of research, and could we improve, and what can we do educationally to have intellectual leadership follow the implications of this, and then maybe even inform the political and decision-making elements and so forth to help human society move in a maximal direction?
We need much more of it. And, you know, to mention something I said before, my next book, The Flouting of the First Amendment, we have a Federal Communications Commission here in 2004. That's the worst group of commissioners that I've ever...
You think so?
Yeah, they make terrible
decisions. The
decisions.
Act of 1996 was not so good?
Well, that one was fortunately found unconstitutional, the part of that act that tried to limit communication on the Internet. But now in 2004, the current Federal Communications Commission is fining CBS. Michael Powell, and you know they have an utter disregard for the First Amendment, and they have absolutely no comprehension about the things that we were talking about. They don't understand that if you want to encourage, you know, communication and you want to improve human welfare, what the government should be is not a censor, not an agency that regulates in a punitive way, but rather an agency that encourages intellectual discussion and ferment and communication. So I'd like to see someday maybe a president will appoint a Secretary of Communication and Media.
We used to have an Office of Telecommunications Policy.
Right.
And there were some pretty good people that advised the executive branch. You know, I'm trying to think of some of the people that were there. There were some good ones. We don't have that, and yet it's very, very important, isn't it?
It is very important.
And do you think, well, this Communications FCC was established in 1934, Communications Act, and then they, in 1996 they did it, they changed it. Do you think there should be some sort of a cabinet-level Office of Information or something along those lines?
Absolutely.
The National Science Foundation doesn't cut it, or?
No, I mean, they're okay. Everyone makes a contribution. But yes, it should be cabinet level because, look, we have a Secretary of Transportation. Fine, that's very important.
Secretary of Labor?
Yeah, why no Secretary of Communication? If anything, that's just as important. People spend more and more of their lives moving information rather than moving themselves.
That's right.
And I think the academic world is beginning to catch up. Business is okay. But, you know, apropos of what we can do to improve the future, the government is one of the main problems at this point.
You really do?
Yes.
Well, there's a lot of people who are imbued at this moment. Mr. Powell and others are imbued and say, let's just say, to carry it out into another realm in a certain sense. Communication is part of the broader evolution of human society and so forth. There are a lot of these people that are in the saddle, these neocon people who have an absolute faith in the market. And they say the government and regulation just gets in the way, just let the market go.
Right.
You know, if it's Van Hayek or if it's Friedman or whatever it is, they're in the saddle now, and it maybe is informing even things going on in Iraq and that kind of thing. So you've got a kind of people that have a certain kind of view that thinks all we have to do is just let the market serve. And how is industry doing? How is Sun Microsystems? How is Microsoft? And the people that have an economic interest in advancing these things, where do they fit in, and are they important, and can they be a leading edge thing? Maybe they're right. Maybe we don't need all these nadering nabobs of government regulation and concern for the masses of the people, and just let the market take care of everything.
Yeah, well, the irony is that Michael Powell is a Republican.
Yes.
And he is the one who is leading the charge for censoring CBS, for, you know, fining Howard Stern, for increasing the level of regulation. You know, it's the kind of government regulation which the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany were comfortable with. And as far as the market regulating itself, I admit I wrote a piece a few years ago called "Leave Microsoft Alone."
Yes, I remember.
Remember we talked about
do remember,
that.
yeah.
And my point is, look, yeah, Bill Gates is a billionaire. You know, I'd like to have some of that money. But the fact is, I don't see how it helps for the government to sue Microsoft. I mean, look what they've done to in effect, get digital media out to people in the United States, and for that matter, the world, in pursuit of profit.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I'm a total laissez-faire, no government involved at all. And I think you have to look at different industries.
And give industry its due,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
right.
also see the idea of the profit motive. Is it an evil thing or not? I don't know.
It's not evil.
It might be part of the human. It gets back again
That's
to
right.
maybe human nature and some of
That's
these
exactly
broad
right.
philosophical questions. But if there's something going on, maybe there's a system that's in place that isn't adequately serving the whole world community in a way that the future requires, then the intellectuals, people who have a pattern recognizing capability of seeing beyond the tunnel vision of parochial views, have a responsibility to start putting some things out in some directions that the policy leaders could repair to if there's some need for a change from what we're doing. Because a lot of people feel this planet's in very, very dire circumstances, you know, given the technological systems of destruction and so forth that we have, and the lack of a foreign or even a domestic policy that is going to serve the needs of the upcoming generations and that kind of thing. We're at an existential moment. And the intellectual community is not giving ideas like they should.
Yeah, well, they are to some extent. But apropos again of the government, my view is rather than prosecuting Martha Stewart and getting the satisfaction, okay, she's being sentenced to 5 months in prison, rather than cracking down on Howard Stern, what the government should be doing is trying to protect us, doing more about terrorism, trying to have an intelligent foreign policy. That's what the government should be doing, not getting in the way of the development of communication systems, which are doing quite fine on their own. I mean, apropos again of the cell phone, we didn't need the government to develop the cell phone. It developed quite well on its own.
Some of it developed from government research. Didn't it all come out of DARPA? Wasn't that all Defense Department kind of research and things?
That was the Internet.
Yeah.
But not
not the cell phone, but I mean
some of the digital revolution.
Yeah, some of the things that are going on in government. There's probably a mix of the two or something, and you need somebody to stand up for the interests of the masses, particularly if Keynes was right and they're going to be able to displace labor in a major way. You're going to have some sort of economic policy going to deal with that new reality.
I'm not worried about that. Because,
You're not?
No, because when technology displaces labor, it displaces labor doing boring, demeaning, dehumanizing jobs. Here's an excellent example.
Only got about a minute left,
Okay.
Paul. Round it up. You got to move fast now, Paul. You got to move
fast.
fast.
Here we go. You go through, you know, tolls these days. You have Easy Pass, and, you know, smart lanes. So that's basically knocked people out of the job of being toll collectors.
Yeah, a lot of toll collectors in the world.
But you know what? They're doing better jobs. Is it a good job to sit there and breathe in those car exhausts? But anyway, getting back.
Not at all. I think it sucks.
That's
but they're only doing it because they have to earn a living.
Right, but it's better if they can earn a living with a less debilitating kind of job.
Well, it would be nice if everybody could have a job that totally fits their personality to a T. It's perfect what they want to do, and they get something for what they do if they could, right?
Wouldn't it be great if everybody could have a job like you and I, where we could just talk to each other?
Well, that good, I don't know, you know. But listen, one thing I can tell you is we're running short on time. I'm sorry. And if there's something where we're going to be able to get it to where people will be able to have access to the things where it would be good if that can be the pattern. I'm not at all sure that it's going to work within the private sector. I think there's still a question of who's going to own the technological systems that create the wealth without the labor input, possibly, and you're going to need some sort of new mechanism. I like public access television, and I certainly like the work of Paul Levinson. It's always good, and one and all is recommended to go to the bookstore and or online. We'll give you a link to that, and it's the book Cell Phone, and you give us the
story of the world's most mobile medium and how it has transformed everything.
Everything, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, and it does. It has implications. Happy to just scratch the surface of a big subject. Thanks, Paul, very much for coming in.
My pleasure.
Best to the family.
Thank
you. And thanks again for coming in. Invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again tomorrow. That's it for this program, and we all recommend you to all go out, get the book, and go online and catch up with Paul Levinson, a really good exponent of the technological extensions of mankind to understand media, and to put it in the words of Mr. McLuhan. But thanks, Paul.
My pleasure.
Till tomorrow, So, okay, Paul, thanks. I'm glad we could round it out. We just got carried away. I think you're going to need a new...